First Contact Protocol. The Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega-7 hung in the void like a metal spider, its sensors reaching out across the star system that marked the edge of Calarian space. For 300 years, those sensors had detected nothing more interesting than asteroid debris and solar wind. The Calarian Empire had grown comfortable in their isolation, believing themselves to be the only intelligent life in this corner of the galaxy. Senior Technician Yaravel was halfway through her night shift when every alarm on the station began, screaming at once. She nearly dropped her cup of bitter tea as red lights bathed the control room in an angry glow. Her forearms moved quickly across the control panels, trying to make sense of the data flooding her screens. "Impossible," she whispered, her scaled skin turning pale. The sensors were detecting energy signatures unlike anything in the Calarian database. Massive objects were appearing at the very edge of detection range, emerging from hyperspace in a coordinated pattern that spoke of military precision. Within minutes, her emergency transmission reached the Imperial Fleet Command on Calaria Prime. Admiral Thane Chorus was reviewing supply reports in his office when the message arrived. At 62 years old, he had served the Empire for 4 decades, rising through the ranks during countless conflicts with pirates and rebels. His gray fur had earned silver streaks, and his yellow eyes held the wisdom of experience. But nothing in his long career had prepared him for this moment. The hologram display showed hundreds of ships arranged in perfect formation. They were unlike any vessel the Calarians had ever encountered. Where Calarian ships were elegant and curved, these newcomers were angular and brutal, built like hammers meant to break worlds. Each one was easily twice the size of a Calarian. Battlecruiser and their energy signatures suggested weapons that could crack planets. "How many?" Admiral Chorus asked, his voice steady despite the shock. 437 confirmed contacts, sir," reported Commander Zex, his aide. "All maintaining perfect formation. No movement toward our territory, but—" He paused, checking his data again. "Sir, they're just sitting there. No communications, no scanning beams, nothing. They're completely silent." The Admiral's tactical mind began working. In his experience, only 2 types of fleet maintained such discipline: those preparing for a massive assault or those showing restraint despite overwhelming power. The question was which type they were facing. "Send word to Emperor Vex immediately," Chorus ordered. "Full priority transmission, and begin mobilizing the 3rd and 7th fleets, but keep them in defensive positions. I want to know what these ships can do before they know what we can do." On Calaria Prime, the capital world of the Empire, Emperor Vex received the news in his crystal throne room. The massive chamber was carved from a single enormous gem, and it caught the light of the twin suns and scattered rainbow patterns across the walls. Vex himself was an imposing figure, standing nearly 8 feet tall with deep purple skin and forearms that ended in razor-sharp claws. He had ruled the Empire for 30 years through strength and decisive action. "Unknown ships?" he rumbled, his deep voice echoing in the chamber. "In our space? At the edge of our territory, Your Majesty," replied General Koss, the Empire's chief military advisor. "They appeared without warning and have made no aggressive moves, but their numbers are concerning." Emperor Vex stood and began pacing, his clawed feet clicking against the crystal floor. The Empire had thrived because it was strong, united, and alone. The idea that another civilization might exist, might be powerful enough to field such a fleet, challenged everything the Calarians believed about their place in the universe. "Could they be rebels?" the Emperor asked. "Some faction we missed?" "Negative, Majesty. The ship designs are completely foreign. The energy signatures don't match any known technology. We're dealing with an entirely new species." Vex stopped pacing. In the Empire's history, first contact with any new group had always ended in either conquest or destruction. It was the way of the galaxy. The strong survived, the weak perished. But this fleet didn't look weak. "Summon the War Council," he commanded. "All senior admirals, all fleet commanders. We need to decide our response before they decide theirs." Back at the monitoring station, Senior Technician Yaravel was still staring at her screens when something changed. One of the massive ships was moving, separating from the formation and approaching slowly. Her sensors detected a massive spike in directed energy, but not weapons charging. Instead, it appeared to be some kind of communication array. The transmission that followed was unlike anything the Calarians had ever received. It came in multiple languages, including several that their computers recognized as mathematical progressions and universal constants. But buried within the stream of data was something that made Yara's blood run cold. Portions of the message were in perfect Calarian. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Expeditionary Fleet, representing the United Terran Republic," the message began. "We come seeking peaceful contact with the Calarian Empire. We have studied your transmissions and learned your language in the hope of communication. We request permission to establish diplomatic relations." Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UTS Defiance, the flagship of humanity's first interstellar diplomatic mission. At 38 years old, she had been chosen to lead this expedition not just for her tactical brilliance, but for her ability to find peaceful solutions in impossible situations. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical military style, and her green eyes held both determination and curiosity. "Signal sent, Captain," reported Lieutenant Marcus Webb, her communications officer. "Now we wait and see if they're willing to talk." Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the Calarian fleet movements. Ships were moving into defensive positions throughout their space, but they hadn't opened fire. That was a good sign, even if it might not last. "Maintain position," she ordered. "All ships hold formation, weapons powered down but ready. We came here to make friends, not enemies, but we're prepared for either." The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for over 50 years. After achieving faster-than-light travel, human scouts had detected the Calarian Empire's radio transmissions and had spent decades studying their language, their culture, and their technology. The decision to make contact had not been made lightly. Earth's government had debated for years about whether to reveal humanity's existence. Some argued for continued secrecy, fearing that contact would lead to war. Others insisted that isolation was not sustainable in the long term, and that peaceful contact was better than hostile discovery. The compromise had been this expedition, a massive show of strength coupled with genuine peaceful intentions. The 400 ships of the expeditionary fleet represented humanity's most advanced military technology, but they had come with diplomats, scientists, and teachers, not conquerors. Admiral Chorus received Captain Chen's message while en route to an emergency meeting with Emperor Vex. He listened to the transmission 3 times, studying every word, every inflection. The human's voice was calm, professional, and seemed genuinely peaceful. But Chorus had been a soldier long enough to know that appearances could be deceiving. What troubled him most was not the message itself, but the implications. These humans had been watching the Calarian Empire, studying them, learning their language. How long had they been out there? What else did they know? The War Council convened in the Empire's military command center, a vast underground complex beneath the capital. Holographic displays showed the tactical situation, with the human fleet marked in ominous red symbols at the edge of Calarian space. "They claim to come in peace," Admiral Chorus reported to the assembled commanders. "But they've brought enough firepower to sterilize every world in our empire." "A classic intimidation tactic," snarled General Koss. "They show overwhelming force, while claiming peaceful intent. It's designed to make us submit without a fight." Emperor Vex studied the display in silence for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold and hard. "In 3 centuries, every time our empire has encountered a new threat, we have struck first and struck hard. It has kept us safe, kept us strong. I see no reason to change that policy now." "Your Majesty," Admiral Chorus said carefully, "perhaps we should consider communication first. If they truly intended to attack, why announce their presence? Why give us time to prepare defenses?" "Because they're testing us," the Emperor replied. "They want to see if we'll show weakness, if we'll negotiate from a position of fear. Well, I won't give them that satisfaction." Vex turned to face the War Council, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of absolute authority. All fleet commanders will receive attack orders within the hour. We strike at dawn, local time. Full assault, no warning, no quarter. We end this threat before it can grow. Several of the younger officers shifted uncomfortably, but none dared to voice dissent. In the Calarian Empire, the Emperor's word was, law and disobedience meant death. Admiral Chorus felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He had followed orders his entire career, had never questioned the Empire's methods. But something about this situation felt different. The human message had been respectful, even humble, despite their obvious military superiority. They had given. Their names identified their homeworld, offered genuine communication. Admiral Chorus, the Emperor continued, you will lead the assault. Your flag squadron will spearhead the attack on their command ship. Make it quick and decisive. Yes, Your Majesty, Chorus replied automatically, but his mind was racing. In a few hours, he would be leading an attack that might start an interstellar war. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on him like gravity. As the War Council dispersed, each commander hurrying to prepare their fleets, Admiral Chorus remained behind. He stared at the tactical display, watching the steady red symbols that represented the human fleet. They hadn't moved, hadn't shown any signs of aggression, they were simply waiting. His aide, Commander Zex, approached quietly. Sir, the fleet is ready to receive your orders. Chorus nodded slowly. Begin the approach pattern. All ships maintain communication silence until the attack begins. He paused, then added, And Zex? Monitor all human transmissions. I want to know if they detect our approach. Yes, sir. Admiral, do you think we're making the right choice? It was a dangerous question in the Calarian Empire, one that could be interpreted as questioning the Emperor's wisdom. But Chorus had known Zex for 15 years, had watched him grow from an eager young officer into a capable commander. He deserved an honest answer. I think we're making the only choice our culture knows how to make, Chorus replied. Whether it's right or wrong, we'll find out soon enough. As the Calarian fleet began its final approach, Admiral Chorus stood alone on his bridge, watching the stars and wondering if he was about to make the biggest mistake in galactic history. Breaking. The Silence Captain Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Defiance's bridge, her eyes fixed on the tactical display that showed the approaching Calarian fleet. Her sensors had detected the movement an hour ago, nearly 200 ships advancing in attack formation, maintaining communication silence, and charging weapons. Captain, called Lieutenant Webb from the communication station. Still no response to our diplomatic channels, but I'm picking up military frequencies. Encrypted, but the pattern suggests coordinated attack preparations. Sarah nodded grimly. She had hoped for a different outcome, but humanity had prepared for this possibility. Signal the fleet. Defensive formation Omega. All ships maintain position but bring weapons online. Do not fire unless fired upon. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their months of training and preparation evident in every action. These men and women had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never return home. They represented humanity's first step into a larger galaxy, and they were determined to make it count. Incoming transmission, Webb reported suddenly. Wait, this isn't coming from the main fleet. Single ship, breaking from formation. On the main screen, a Calarian vessel appeared, smaller than the others, but still impressive by human standards. Its hull was a deep blue-green color, marked with silver insignia that human intelligence had identified as belonging to a senior fleet commander. This is Admiral Thane Chorus of the Imperial Calarian Navy, came the transmission. The universal translator rendered his words in clear English, though something in his tone suggested deep internal conflict. I request permission to speak with your fleet commander. Sarah exchanged glances with her first officer, Commander Elena Vasquez. This was unexpected, but it might represent their best chance for peaceful resolution. Open the channel, Sarah ordered. This is Captain Sarah Chen, commanding the Earth Expeditionary Fleet. Admiral Chorus, I'm honored to speak with you. The holographic display shimmered, and Admiral Chorus appeared on the bridge. He was taller than most humans, with gray fur and intelligent yellow eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His expression was unreadable, but Sarah could sense the weight of decision in his bearing. "Captain Chen," Chorus began, "I must inform you that my fleet has been ordered to attack your ships. We will reach firing range in approximately 30 minutes. Sarah felt her crew tense around her, but she kept her voice steady. "Admiral, we came here seeking peaceful contact. We have no desire for conflict with your empire." "I believe you," Chorus replied, and the admission seemed to surprise him as much as it did the humans. "But belief and duty are not always aligned. My emperor sees your fleet as a threat that must be eliminated." "What do you see, Admiral?" Chorus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes studying Sarah's face through the transmission. "I see beings who could have attacked without warning, who could have struck from the darkness and caught us unprepared. Instead, you announced your presence and offered communication. You showed restraint despite overwhelming advantage." "Then help us find another way," Sarah said. "There has to be an alternative to bloodshed. In my culture, strength is the only language that matters. The strong survive, the weak perish. It has served us for centuries." "And yet you're talking to me instead of firing," Sarah observed. "That suggests your culture might be more complex than your emperor believes." Chorus's expression shifted slightly, and for a moment Sarah thought she saw something like hope in his alien features. "You study us well, Captain. Yes, there are those among us who question the old ways, but we are few and our voices carry little weight." "Sometimes it only takes one voice to start a change," Sarah replied. "Admiral, let me tell you about humanity. A century ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves in global wars. We learned that strength without wisdom leads only to devastation. We became strong by learning to build rather than destroy, to unite rather than divide. And you think the Calarian Empire can learn the same lesson? I think any species capable of creating art, music, and literature, and we've seen evidence of all three in your transmissions, is capable of choosing a better path." The transmission flickered as Admiral Chorus looked away, clearly struggling with an internal decision. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "My attack fleet will arrive in 25 minutes. If you withdraw now, you might escape with most of your ships intact. We won't run, Admiral. We came here to make contact with your people, and we'll stay until that mission is complete or we're destroyed trying." "Then you're fools," Chorus said, but there was no malice in his voice. "Brave fools, perhaps, but fools nonetheless." "Maybe," Sarah agreed, "but we've learned that sometimes you have to risk everything to gain something worthwhile. Admiral, you have a choice to make. You can follow your orders and start a war that neither of our species wants, or you can help us find a different way." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the human bridge in tense silence. Sarah stared at the empty hologram projector, wondering if she had just thrown away humanity's last chance for peace. Aboard his flagship, Admiral Chorus stood alone, in his command chamber, his forearms clenched at his sides. Captain Chen's words echoed in his mind, challenging everything he had been taught about strength and survival. For 40 years, he had followed orders without question, had served the Empire with absolute loyalty. But now, facing the possibility of starting an unnecessary war, he found himself questioning that loyalty for the first time. His communication system chimed with an incoming message from Emperor Vex. "Admiral Chorus, status report. Are you in position to begin the attack?" "Nearly in position, Your Majesty," Chorus replied. "The human fleet maintains defensive posture, no signs of retreat." "Good. When you strike, make it decisive. I want this threat eliminated completely." "Your Majesty, I've spoken with their commander. They appear to be genuinely peaceful. Perhaps we should consider—" "I should consider nothing," Vex interrupted, his voice cold with fury. "You will follow your orders, Admiral. Attack immediately upon reaching optimal range, that is final." The transmission ended, and Chorus stood in the darkness of his chamber, feeling the weight of command more heavily than ever before. Through the viewport, he could see the human fleet in the distance holding position despite knowing they faced overwhelming odds. It was either the act of fools or heroes, and Chorus was beginning to suspect it was the latter. A soft chime announced the arrival of his aide, Commander Zex. "Sir, we're 5 minutes from optimal firing range. All ships report ready." "Zex," Chorus said quietly, "in all our years of service, have we ever fought an enemy that didn't fire first?" The younger officer thought for a moment. "No, sir. Pirates, rebels, criminals, they all showed their hostile intent before we engaged them. And yet we're about to attack beings who have done nothing but ask to talk. Sir, are you having doubts about the mission?" Chorus turned to face his aide, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in the younger officer's eyes. "Tell me honestly, Zex, does this feel right to you?" Commander Zex was quiet for several seconds before answering. "No, sir, it doesn't. But orders are orders." "Yes," Chorus agreed. "They are." The Admiral moved to his command console and activated the fleet communication system. In a few minutes, he would give the order that would either save or damn both species. His finger hovered over the attack authorization key, and time seemed to slow to a crawl. Instead of pressing the key, he activated a different channel, one that connected him directly to Captain Chen. "Captain, this is Admiral Chorus. I'm transmitting our fleet positions and attack patterns to you now. Adjust your formation accordingly." On the human bridge, chaos erupted as the tactical display updated with detailed Calarian fleet positions and movement vectors. Sarah stared at the information in shock, realizing that Admiral Chorus had just committed the ultimate act of treason against his own empire. "Admiral," she said, her voice filled with amazement and gratitude. "Why?" "Because you were right," Chorus replied. "Sometimes you have to risk everything to gain something worthwhile. I'm risking my life, my career, and my honor on the belief that peace is possible between our peoples. You won't regret this decision." "I hope not, Captain. But I should warn you, my fellow commanders won't be as easily convinced. Some will follow my lead, but others will continue the attack. This isn't over yet." Sarah nodded grimly. "Then we'll face whatever comes together." As Admiral Chorus had predicted, his decision to break ranks created chaos within the Calarian fleet. Some ships followed their admiral's example, powering down weapons and breaking from attack formation. Others, commanded by officers loyal to Emperor Vex, continued their approach with full intent to destroy the human fleet. The next hour became a delicate dance of diplomacy and deterrence. Admiral Chorus used his authority and reputation to convince as many commanders as possible to stand down, while Captain Chen demonstrated humanity's peaceful intentions by repeatedly refusing to fire even when fired upon. The turning point came when Commander Zex, inspired by his admiral's courage, opened communication with other junior officers throughout the fleet. Word spread quickly that the humans had numerous opportunities to attack but had chosen restraint instead. More ships began to break from the attack formation, creating a growing schism within the Calarian force. Emperor Vex, watching the situation unfold from his throne room, flew into a rage. He immediately branded Admiral Chorus a traitor and ordered his arrest, but found that many fleet commanders were unwilling to fire on their former leader. The Empire's absolute unity, maintained for centuries through fear and strict hierarchy, began to crack under the weight of conscience. As the immediate military crisis subsided, Captain Chen and Admiral Chorus began the delicate work of building trust between their species. They arranged for small groups from each fleet to meet aboard neutral shuttles, allowing Calarians and humans to see each other as individuals rather than threats. The cultural exchange that followed revealed remarkable similarities between the two species. Both had evolved from predatory backgrounds but had developed complex societies based on cooperation and mutual support. Both had created art, music, and literature that spoke to universal themes of hope, love, and the search for meaning. Most importantly, both species had members who dreamed of something better than endless conflict and isolation. Admiral Chorus paid dearly for his decision. He was stripped of rank and declared an enemy of the state, but he found a new purpose as humanity's first Calarian ally. Together with Captain Chen, he worked to establish secret communication channels between moderate elements in the Calarian Empire and Earth's diplomatic corps. The changes didn't happen overnight. Emperor Vex remained implacably opposed to human contact, and hardline elements in both species continued to advocate for military solutions. But the seed of change had been planted, and it grew slowly but steadily. Years later, when the first official embassy was established between Earth and a reformed Calarian republic, Captain Sarah Chen and former Admiral Thane Chorus stood together at the dedication ceremony. The galaxy was still dangerous, still full of unknowns and potential conflicts, but it was no longer quite so lonely. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Chorus asked, watching human and Calarian children play together in the embassy gardens. Sarah smiled, remembering that tense moment when he had risked everything for peace. "Look around, Admiral. What do you think?" The answer was evident in the laughter of children, the animated conversations between scientists sharing discoveries, and the sight of two species working together toward a common future. Sometimes the greatest victories were not won through strength of arms, but through the courage to extend a hand in friendship when war seemed inevitable. The Dreadnought fleet had arrived in silence, but it left behind something far more valuable than fear. It left behind hope for a galaxy where different species could meet as friends rather than enemies.